This is a brief re-entry program overview for Washington State. As we understand, there are 12 prisons involved in this project throughout the state of Washington, and the goal would be to bring to a centralized place for centralized training representatives from each of the 12 prisons. So this is what would evolve as we know that there are men's prisons and there are women's prisons. And so those who would attend that centralized training, when they go back, they would have the ability to facilitate the medicine wheel in 12 steps, one in the men's prisons, one in the women's prisons. In addition to that, during the 4-day training, they would be taught the warrior down concepts, the warrior down for men and the warrior down for women, who would possibly facilitate these programs inside of the prisons would be the counselors who work there, or else it would be volunteers who would come into the prison to help conduct the medicine wheel 12 steps, or it is even designed, if it works out, to have the inmates be trained on how to facilitate the groups, then they also could facilitate the medicine wheel in 12 steps. So then as they get released from the prison, then who also would be attending the training would be counselors, volunteers, or recovering community who would be conducting the medicine wheel 12 steps in the communities to which they would return. And it is here, then when they got out, they would already be working the 12 steps in prison on themselves. They would know about the warrior down concept, so that when they come out to the communities, the same program that they got in prison, they would be attending out in the communities. And so the goal for this is to do this 4-day training. There will be 2 trainers, one who will train the men, and we'll have a woman who will train the women facilitators, those who are working in the women prisons, who would consist of the counselors working in the prisons and also recovery volunteers that we know also volunteer to work inside of the walls. What we call this medicine wheel 12-step program, the ones who conduct this, we call them fire starters. So a fire starter is typically an individual who's in recovery, who's walking the red road, has some experience with the 12 steps, and willing to make a year commitment to lead circles of recovery in their own community. So we've taken AA's 12 steps, we've modified the wording of the steps, and we add the cultural teachings to those. In this case, we'll call it the medicine wheel 12 steps for the cultural knowledge that is added to it. And so what this looks like in this medicine wheel 12-step program is we've taken 3 steps and we put them in the east, steps 4, 5, 6 in the south, steps 7, 8, 9 in the west, and steps 10, 11, 12 in the north. And then to add the 4 directions training, so in the east, working those 3 steps, what you are able to do in that direction is where you find your relationship with the Creator or your higher power or God as you understand Him. The steps 4, 5, 6 are the inventory steps, so this is where you work on yourself and you find out your strengths and your weaknesses, so you build a relationship with yourself. Step 7, 8, 9, this is where you make your amends, and so you go and you set yourself right with your relatives and people that you did harm to. And then steps 10, 11, 12 in the north, that's the elder's wisdom. And so in the communities, when we have implemented this program a number of years ago, what we did is we created a medicine wheel 12 steps. This is for the alcoholism that's in the communities. And what we found was, as the 12 steps helped to bring back the culture, the ceremonies, the spirituality, and the sense of recovery, then what we started to see is the men started to come back to be the native men of which they were originally born. And of course we know that men and women heal differently, so we also had to make a program specifically for women, because men and women, we heal differently. And this is how you start a recovering community. And so these people who are trained on medicine wheel 12 steps, we call them coaches. So they start to work with people using the video series that they're trained on, the participant workbook, there's a facilitator's manual, and so they form these circles of recovery working with people in groups or on one-on-one, and then eventually out of those groups somebody then develops the skills so that they can turn around and start their own group, and so it's quite self-sustaining over a period of time in order to create this recovery community and joining the circles of recovery, which sometimes we call peer-to-peer coaching. It's one person helping another person. And so the other part of the program that they'll be taught on is something called Warrior Down. Warrior Down is a re-entry program. It could be re-entry from prison, from probation, from parole, or it could be from Native treatment centers or natives in recovery. So it's an entry or aftercare program. And so in the Warrior Down training, they're taught on how to do orientation so that when a person comes back to the community, then they attend a fire starter group who has been trained on the Warrior Down concepts. And so as they come to this group, they've had this training in the prison system, so when they come out, they have the similar training and the similar support that they had in terms of when they were in prison. And so the Warrior Down group, the training on it, what it helps to do is to build relationships, to help find housing, to help find jobs, to get people to the sweat lodges. Is to build a community support so when a person comes out of prison that they have a support group and that they're not alone. So we believe it is possible that when our men and women come out of prison that they come back to a community that's healthy, because we need to have our men and women, when they get out, we need to have them come out and stay out and to be together with the families and with their spouses and within the community. And so it is important for us to realize that instead of handing down the historical trauma or the dysfunction that's in our community, that when they come out, instead of passing down, going back to the same old groups, that they come out and breaking the cycle. And so what they come out is doing is coming back to be a Native person, coming back to be a strong man, coming back to be a strong woman. And then this is what they hand down to their children and to their families. And so it's by breaking the cycle. So using the culture and the reentry concepts and the Warrior Down as we teach each one to come out of the prison and stay out.